Welcome back to Minutes of Inspiration. I'm your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be exceedingly glad therein. I want to dive right in, and we're going to come from the very first book of the Bible. It's not that Genesis is considered to be the eldest book of the Bible. Some believe that Job is the oldest book of the Bible that was perhaps penned around the time of Abram. Some say even around the time of Jacob as he became Israel. And so, but in the chronological order, I want to deal with Genesis 1 and 1 through verse 3. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. My dear brothers and sisters, I want to concentrate on verse 3 for this segment. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. When we look at the scripture, we see that previously to God speaking and permitting the light now to shine, we see first of all that God was moving upon the face of the waters. It's very important that we understand as a church that when the Spirit of God begins to move, the very next thing that comes is light. Whenever there is a time of darkness, whenever there is a time of great turmoil and great upheaval in the world and the lives of men, God seems to always move on this situation, and then he brings forth light. And so we want to ask a question then, because for many, how can God move if he is omnipresent, if he is everywhere? What it simply means is that God now, with his word, with his thought, begins to change circumstances, begins to change the situation. He does not have to move to get to you because he's omnipresent, his Spirit is in you, he's everywhere. But the moving of God then designates that God begins to respond to your prayer, and God begins to change and to shift the total situation. We see one where the scripture says the earth was in a state of tahu vabahu. It was empty and void in life, and it appears to have had some judgment. I don't want to get into whether or not this is the original earth or it was a secondary creation or a refining of a chaotic earth. These things we'll talk about a little later, and many of these things, when we start talking about it causes contrivances and separations because everyone loves to feel that their interpretation is correct. And just about everybody who's either written commentaries or who interprets this text hermeneutically, they will determine and they are sure that they are, of course, interpreting it according to the laws of hermeneutics, and it is the correct interpretation. And so at best, we all are striving to get an understanding of the text. And even though the text reveals the secret to the text, it's not that we always pick up the right formula to interpret the text. And so, but one thing that we do see is that there is a face on the waters that appears to be dark. And God immediately says, "Let there be light." But it's after he's moved upon the situation. The Spirit of God moves, and then God speaks. So, my dear friend, my brothers and sisters, what I want you to understand is that in dark times, God is not silent. In calamity times or times of calamity, God is not silent. He's already moved because these things were already foreknown by God. Not that God caused them, but God knows every phase of time. If he can count every snowflake and knows the differentiation of them all, if he's bottled our tears, he certainly knows the time frames in which he himself created time. And so here is darkness upon all over the globe, and the Spirit of God moves upon the face of the waters. And I'm looking at this because every time I see face, Paniym, it deals with the plural presences, or the presence of all that something is. And God said, let there be light. It's very interesting because when we look at the text, God speaks. The term said here is the word amar, and so he utters. Remember, there can be no utterance unless there is sentience of thought. And so God is conscious, God understands everything that there is. And God said, let there be. He uses a very interesting word because this is the word haya. Haya means to become, come to pass, exist, or allow something to arise or to appear. This isn't what we would call the sunlight. It's not the light from the moon, because it's a little later where God begins to create the sun, the moon, and the stars. But when we look at this, he says, and let there be light. Haya, light be. And there was light. Always remember, as much as a calamity can happen overnight, in just a moment, God can fix it. And so as we discern the reason for all of this, we have to understand that if God is permitting it, it's going to work out something for the church's good. He's bringing us into a greater enlightenment about grace, about his plans and purposes for the eschatological end, the end times and the last days. And so whenever there's darkness, God is already there. And whenever there's trouble, God is just a word away. God said, let there be light. Phos. He speaks about now an uncreated light. Remember, when we talk about the moon and the sun, the stars, those are things that are created. But this light was something other than the sun, moon, and the stars. It indicates then that light has always existed long before darkness. And so we see then, in times of darkness, God will release the light, and God is present. My dear beloved brothers and sisters, remember, wherever you are, God is there. Whatever's going on, it's just one word away from being fixed by the hand of God. I'm out of time. This has been Minutes of Inspiration, and I'm your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves. God bless you, heaven smile upon you, and always remember, Jesus is yet Lord, and he's coming back again, and every eye shall behold him. God bless you until next time.